The projection flickered to life, and I knew, immediately, that I had made a terrible mistake. My name is Theron Valis, Senior Instructor at the Galactic Defense Academy's Xenopsychology Division, and I've been teaching alien species analysis for 37 cycles. 37 cycles of explaining behavioral patterns, combat doctrines, and psychological profiles of every species in the known galaxy. I've shown footage of Krathian berserker charges, Valonian hive mind tactics, even the disturbing efficiency of shadows that consume during the Outer Rim conflicts. I thought I'd seen everything. I was wrong. Today, I announced to my class of 214 cadets, representing 43 different species, we will analyze combat footage from humanity's pre-contact era. These recordings were provided by the Terran Embassy as part of the Cultural Exchange Initiative. The cadets stirred with polite interest. Humans, after all, were the newest species to achieve faster-than-light travel, the most recent addition to the Galactic Council. Barely 20 cycles since first contact. Technologically primitive, militarily insignificant, their homeworld was a single planet with no colonies, no empire, no real power projection capability. We thought we were doing them a favor by letting them join. The footage spans several conflicts from their 20th century, measured in their years, I continued, manipulating the holographic controls. This will give you insight into pre-spaceflight warfare and human tactical thinking. That last part I added, with what I thought was appropriate, scholarly detachment. The first video began playing. It was grainy, black and white, clearly ancient by anyone's standards. The date stamp read 1944, a beach, smoke everywhere, metal structures partially submerged in water. Then the camera panned, and I saw them. Humans, thousands of them, running directly into machine gun fire, not charging with energy, shields or powered armor or gravitational dampeners, just running, wearing fabric uniforms and metal helmets, carrying projectile weapons that looked like they belonged in a museum. The ocean behind them was red with their own blood, and they kept coming. Instructor Valis, one of my students, a Polarian with excellent tactical scores, raised his primary manipulator. Why aren't they taking cover? Because, I said, squinting at the data readout the Terran Embassy had provided, there is no cover. This is a beach landing. They had to cross open ground under fortified enemy fire. Then why attempt it at all? The casualties must be catastrophic, I finished. Yes, approximately 2,000 casualties in the first hours. The classroom went silent. And they continued? Another cadet asked, mandibles clicking nervously. On screen, a human fell, was dragged aside by his companions, and 3 more ran past his body to continue up the beach. An explosion threw bodies into the air. More humans ran through the smoke. They took the beach, I said, quietly checking my notes. They called it D-Day. It was considered a success. A success, someone whispered in horror. The second video loaded automatically. Color this time, dated 1968. A jungle, dense vegetation. The camera was mounted on a human soldier's helmet, his breathing audible over the audio feed. Contact, someone shouted, and suddenly the world was fire and chaos and screaming. The humans didn't retreat, they advanced, toward the gunfire, through it. One took a projectile round through his shoulder, staggered, switched his weapon to his other hand, and kept firing. Another threw himself on what the data file identified as a fragmentation grenade to protect his squad. He just threw himself on it, knew it would kill him. Did it anyway. Sweet, merciful void, breathed Kelix, my teaching assistant, a Vorsian with 2 combat tours. They don't have regeneration, do? No, I said. They don't. No genetic redundancy? No rapid healing factors? No. When they're damaged, they're damaged. Permanently. Then why would he? To save the others, I said, though my voice was shaking now. They call it jumping on a grenade. It's apparently not uncommon. The third video started, and I desperately wanted to stop it, but my hands were frozen on the controls. Afghanistan, 2010. A human patrol, ambushed in a mountain pass, outnumbered 6-1. No air support available for 18 minutes. The tactical analysis ran in text beside the video. Insufficient ammunition, no cover, wounded soldiers, enemy holding high ground. Standard doctrine for every species in the galaxy. Retreat, regroup, wait for support. The human commander, a female with the rank insignia of staff sergeant, made a different choice. "Fix bayonets," she said calmly into her radio. And they did. They attached metal blades to their projectile weapons and charged uphill, into superior numbers, with knives. "No," Kellick said beside me. "No, that's not possible. That's not a rational response to that tactical situation." But it was happening on screen. The humans were screaming, a sound that made every species in the classroom recoil instinctively. Not a scream of fear, a scream of rage and defiance, and something that had no name in any language I knew. They won. They took the high ground, routed an enemy force 3 times their size, and held the position until reinforcements arrived. The staff sergeant was wounded 7 times. She refused medical evacuation until every member of her squad was treated first. "I need to pause this," I said, but the 4th video was already loading. Fallujah, 2004, urban combat, room-to-room fighting. The footage came from multiple sources, compiled into a tactical overview. I watched humans clear buildings where every corner might hide an enemy, where every door might be booby-trapped, where any mistake meant death. They did it anyway, building after building, street after street, for weeks. One soldier's personal camera showed him carrying a wounded comrade through a kill zone while under fire from 3 directions. He made it, barely. The data noted he was recommended for a Medal of Valor. "How many of these do they give out?" a cadet asked weakly. I checked the file. Hundreds, per conflict. The classroom was in chaos now. Cadets were hyperventilating, several were openly crying, and 3 had already left. Kellick was staring at the screen with all 4 of his eyes unfocused, his mandibles slack. "Instructor," he said hoarsely, "what are we watching?" "Human warfare," I replied, though my voice sounded distant even to my own ears. "No," he said. "No, this is insanity. This is mass suicide with extra steps." The 5th video loaded, then the 6th, then the 7th. World War I trench warfare. Humans living in mud and filth and rats, breathing poison gas, going over the top into barbed wire and machine gun fire because they were ordered to, dying by the thousands for a few meters of ground. A pilot with a damaged aircraft deliberately crashing it into an enemy ship to take them both down. They had a word for it. Kamikaze. A medic running into open fire to treat wounded soldiers, unarmed, marked with medical symbols that the enemy consistently ignored. Running out again and again. 6 times. 8 times. 12 times before a projectile finally stopped him. "They're all like this," a cadet said, voice breaking. "Every single one is like this." I couldn't respond because I was watching a video labeled simply Mogadishu, 1993. Humans, surrounded, outnumbered more than 10 to 1, fighting for 18 hours straight. When asked by their command if they wanted to retreat, their commander said, "We don't leave our people behind." They didn't. They fought through the entire city to recover. They're wounded and dead, all of them. "Stop the recording," Kellick said. "I can't," I whispered. "It's on automatic feed." "Then override it." "I'm trying." But the files kept playing. Syria, 2016. Iraq again, different year. Small units, isolated teams, humans doing things that violated every principle of self-preservation. A sniper team that held a position for 32 hours straight, no sleep, no relief, because retreating would compromise their unit. A pilot who stayed in a damaged aircraft, knowing it would crash, to guide it away from a populated area. One video showed a human soldier, both legs destroyed by an explosive device, propped against a wall, still providing covering fire for his retreating squad, still fighting, still firing his weapon with blood pooling around him because his squad needed those extra seconds. He survived, according to the notes, lost both legs permanently, returned to active duty 3 years later with prosthetics, returned to combat, voluntarily. "They're death worlders," someone said. A Thessian cadet I'd always considered level-headed. "They have to be. Nothing else makes sense." I pulled up Earth's environmental classification. Class 7. Moderate gravity, standard oxygen mix, temperate climate zones. "It's not even classified as a hostile world. Then what's wrong with them?" Kellick demanded. I didn't have an answer. The videos continued. I lost track of how many. Different wars, different centuries, different weapons, but always the same pattern. Humans charging into death, humans refusing to surrender, humans doing impossible things because someone had to do them. And then the final video loaded, and I felt my internal organs try to void themselves. It was footage from the Greshin Border Conflict, just 4 cycles ago. The first and only time humans had faced a galactic military force. The Greshin Empire, one of the oldest and most powerful military forces in the galaxy, had decided to test these newcomers. A small border dispute, really. Hardly worth mentioning in the grand scheme. The Greshin sent one of their standard patrol fleets, 53 ships, more than adequate to intimidate a species with barely 20 functional warp-capable vessels. The human fleet consisted of 6 ships. 6. Standard doctrine. Retreat immediately, open diplomatic channels, accept whatever terms necessary to avoid conflict with a vastly superior force. The humans opened fire. The tactical footage showed the human vessels accelerating directly toward the Greshin fleet. No fancy maneuvers, no attempts at negotiation. Just a straight charge, weapons firing, like something out of their ancient Earth videos. One human ship, the destroyer USS Johnston according to the registry, was hit early. Critical damage, life support failing, main guns offline. It didn't retreat. Instead, it rammed the Greshin flagship at 0.6 light speed. Both ships were annihilated instantly. The remaining 5 human vessels pressed their attack, fighting at ranges so close that their own explosions damaged them. One captain deliberately detonated his ship's reactor next to a Greshin carrier, creating a blast that disabled 6 nearby vessels. The Greshin fleet withdrew after losing 21 ships. The humans lost 4 out of 6 vessels. They claimed victory. The video ended. The classroom was absolutely silent. Then, slowly, cadets began standing up and walking out. Not running, not panicking, just leaving, calmly, quietly, with the expression of people who had fundamentally re-evaluated their life choices. Kellix turned to me, all 4 eyes wide. "How many?" he asked. "How many what? How many resignations?" I checked my datapad, where resignation requests were already flooding in. Currently, 107 out of 214. Half the class, he said numbly. Half the class just quit the military after watching human war footage. "Can you blame them?" I asked. He didn't answer. He was too busy submitting his own resignation. I sat alone in the empty classroom, staring at the frozen final frame of the Johnston ramming the Greshin flagship at relativistic speeds. The human captain's last words were in the audio file. "This is for Pearl Harbor, you alien bastards." I had no idea what Pearl Harbor was. I pulled up the reference. Another human naval battle. Another impossible situation. Another example of humans fighting long after any rational species would have surrendered, my communicator chimed. A priority message from Admiral Greshin, head of the Galactic Defense Academy. "Instructor Valis, what in the bleeding void happened to your class? I have 109 resignation requests from cadets, citing ethical concerns about future combat operations and insufficient death wish to serve alongside humans." "Explain." 100 in life. 9 now. The number was climbing. I looked at the screen again, at the grainy footage of humans doing impossible things, at the statistics showing casualty rates that should have broken any species' will to fight, at the pattern, the undeniable pattern, of humans simply refusing to stop. "Admiral," I said carefully, "I showed them the truth about humanity, and they decided they didn't want to know any more." There was a long pause. "What truth, exactly?" the Admiral asked, voice tight. I thought about the beach landing, the grenade, the uphill charge with bayonets, the pilot who crashed rather than retreat, the medic who ran into fire 12 times, the Johnston's last charge. "That humans don't fight to win," I said slowly. "They fight because stopping is worse, and they can't be killed enough to make them stop." Another pause. "Longer this one." "Noted," the Admiral said. "Send me the footage. The Council needs to see this." The transmission ended. I sat there for a long time, alone in the empty classroom, with the frozen image of a human ship dying in an explosion bright enough to light up a solar system, and I wondered what kind of species looks at certain death and calls it Tuesday. Then, My own communicator chimed with a new message. It was from the Terran Embassy. Instructor Valis, we hope the educational materials were useful. If you need additional context for the warfare footage, we can provide documentation on our cultural concepts of honor, duty, and going down swinging. Also, next week's shipment includes footage from our entertainment industry, military training programs, and something called American football. Please confirm receipt. Entertainment industry. They made entertainment about war. And American football. I looked it up. It was a game where humans deliberately collided with each other at high speeds for recreation, for fun. I stared at my communicator for a long moment. Then I opened a new file and began typing my own resignation letter. Some truths, I decided, were too terrible to teach. The resignation letter sat unfinished on my datapad for 3 days. I couldn't send it, not because I wanted to stay, understand, but because I kept thinking about that frozen frame, the Johnston, the humans who flew it straight into oblivion without hesitation, without fear, with what the audio logs suggested was enthusiasm. This is for Pearl Harbor, you alien bastards. I'd researched Pearl Harbor extensively. Another sneak attack, another impossible situation, another example of humans taking catastrophic losses and somehow turning it into motivation rather than despair. They had a saying about it. Remember Pearl Harbor. Not forget Pearl Harbor. Not learn from Pearl Harbor. Remember. Hold on to that pain and use it as fuel. What kind of species does that? My office door chimed. I didn't want visitors, but it opened anyway because apparently I'd forgotten to lock it. Too busy reading human military history at 3 in the morning, cross-referencing battle after battle after battle, looking for the pattern, the breaking point, the moment when humans finally said, enough. I never found it. Instructor Valis? It was Cadet Mirren, one of the few who hadn't resigned. A Kelvari, 6-limbed, with sensory organs that could detect lies through pheromone analysis. She was one of my best students. Was. Cadet, I said tiredly. If you're here to resign, the process is automated now. Just submit through. I'm not resigning, she interrupted. I'm here because the Terran Embassy sent someone to speak with the remaining cadets. They said you should be there too. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Why would they do that? I think, she said slowly, they want to explain. The assembly hall was depressing. Of the original 214 cadets, only 63 remained. Some had transferred to non-combat divisions. Others had simply left the academy entirely, citing reasons like profound philosophical differences with modern warfare doctrine, and suddenly remembering, I promised my parent unit I'd take over the family business. Kellix was gone. My teaching assistant for 8 cycles, 2 combat tours, decorated for valor, had submitted his resignation 6 hours after the lecture. His exit interview was a single sentence. I'm not brave enough to fight next to humans, and I'm too smart to fight against them. The remaining cadets sat scattered throughout the hall like survivors of a shipwreck, and maybe we were. The Terran representative stood at the podium, and I felt my respiratory system stutter. He was human. Of course he was human. Mid-40s by their years, wearing what my database identified as business casual attire, completely inappropriate for a military academy. No uniform, no rank insignia, just a button-up shirt with the sleeves rolled up and trousers that had probably been wrinkled since the previous week. He had a disposable cup of something steaming in one hand and a datapad in the other. He looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Good morning, he said, his voice carrying easily despite the poor acoustics. My name is Marcus Delaney. I'm a cultural liaison officer with the Terran Diplomatic Corps, which is a fancy way of saying I explain humans to confused aliens and try to prevent interstellar incidents. He paused. I'm told I'm not very good at the second part. Nobody laughed. We were too busy analyzing him, trying to reconcile this tired-looking bureaucrat with the footage of humans charging into machine gun fire. So, he continued, taking a sip of his drink, I hear you watch some of our war documentaries, and I hear about half of you quit immediately afterward. He nodded slowly. Yeah, that's pretty reasonable, actually. The honesty was startling. I'm supposed to reassure you, he said, reading from his datapad. Explain that those were extreme historical examples, that modern human warfare is more civilized, that we've evolved beyond such tactics. He looked up, met our eyes. But that would be a lie, and I'm terrible at lying. So instead, I'm going to tell you the truth, and then you can decide if you want to stay or go. He set down his datapad and his coffee. Humans are terrified all the time, he said simply. That's the part you're missing from the footage. Every single one of those soldiers was scared. The guy who jumped on the grenade knew he was going to die, and he was probably screaming inside his own head the entire time. The pilots who crashed their planes, the squads that charged uphill with bayonets, the medic who ran into fire 12 times, they were all terrified. Then why do it? Cadet Mirren asked, mandibles clicking. If you know the fear, if you understand the impossibility, why continue? Marcus smiled, but it wasn't a happy expression. Because someone has to. That's the core of it, really. We look at impossible situations and we think, well, somebody has to do this terrible thing, and if I don't do it, it'll fall to someone else. Maybe someone younger, maybe someone less prepared, maybe someone who won't come back. He picked up his coffee again, took another sip. Your species, all of your species, you have this beautiful rationality. You calculate odds, you assess risks, you make logical decisions. When the math says retreat, you retreat. When the numbers say surrender, you surrender. It's smart, it's sensible. It's how intelligent beings should operate. But not humans? I asked, my voice rough. Oh, we do the math too, Marcus said. We know the odds. We run the calculations. We understand statistics and probability just fine. He paused, searching for words. We just decide they don't apply to us. Not because we're special, but because we're too stubborn to let reality win without a fight. That's insane, someone said. Yes, Marcus agreed cheerfully. Completely insane. But here's the thing about humans. We've been doing insane things for our entire history. We climbed out of our evolutionary niche on the African plains by deciding that things much bigger and stronger than us would make good eating if we just tried hard enough. We spread across our entire planet, including places that should have killed us, deserts and tundras and mountains, just to see if we could. We looked at the sky and said, I bet we could go there. And then we did. He gestured at the darkened projection screen. Those wars you watched, those were humans fighting each other. Imagine what we're like when we're unified, when we're all pointing in the same direction, when we decide something is worth protecting or worth achieving. The silence was heavy. The Greshin thought they could intimidate us, Marcus continued. They sent 53 ships to our 6. They calculated the odds, determined we'd surrender, and prepared their victory speeches. But they made one critical error. What error? Mirren asked quietly. They assumed we'd do the math the same way they did. Marcus's smile was sharp now. The Johnston's captain, Commander Sarah Huang, she did do the math. 6 ships versus 53. Minimal chance of victory through conventional engagement. High probability of catastrophic losses. Logical conclusion, retreat. He paused. But Commander Huang grew up in San Francisco. Her grandmother was at Pearl Harbor. Her great-great-grandfather fought at Normandy. That beach landing you saw. She had 4 generations of people who looked at impossible odds and said, not today. Marcus's voice softened. She did the math. Then she decided the Greshin needed to learn something more important than mathematics. What could be more important than mathematics in warfare? I asked. Spite, Marcus said simply. Pure, distilled human spite. The Greshin Empire had been bullying younger species for millennia. They had protocols, procedures, expectations. They knew how species reacted when outgunned. Commander Huang decided to introduce a new variable into their calculations. He pulled up a new video file. This is the Greshin Fleet Commander's testimony to their military tribunal. It was part of the public record. We translated it. The video showed a Greshin admiral, their carapace scarred, their chromatophores cycling through colors that indicated extreme distress. They didn't retreat, the admiral said, voice modulated through the translator. They should have retreated. We had superior numbers, superior positioning, superior firepower. Every tactical simulation showed they would withdraw. They did not withdraw. They accelerated. They targeted our flagship with a damaged vessel that should have been fleeing. We attempted to warn them their collision course would result in mutual destruction. Their response was, The Admiral's color shifted to something my database identified as horror. They accelerated faster. The tribunal asked why the fleet withdrew. Because, the Admiral said slowly, we suddenly understood that humans would trade one ship for 5 of ours, one life for 10 of ours, one victory for 100 defeats, and they would never stop. The mathematics of attrition became clear. They don't surrender, they don't root, they just continue. Until they win, or until they're all dead. We couldn't afford to fight a species that doesn't understand when they've lost. The video ended. Marcus looked at us, his expression unreadable. The Greshin Empire pulled back from their aggressive expansion policies after that, not because we won, but because we scared them. 6 ships. We had 6 ships, and we scared one of the oldest military powers in the galaxy. That's not reassuring, Mirren said. That's proving everything we feared about your species. I know, Marcus said gently, and that's why I'm here, not to convince you to stay, not to recruit you for joint operations, but to explain what you're actually afraid of. He sat on the edge of the podium, suddenly looking very tired. You're not afraid humans are warriors. The galaxy has warriors. You're not afraid we're violent. Every species has violence in its history. What terrifies you is that we're absolutely sincere about it. There's no bluff, no posturing, no calculation. When we say we'll fight, we mean it. When we say we won't surrender, we actually won't. When we say we'll go down swinging, that's not metaphorical. How do you live like that? I asked, the question bursting out before I could stop it. How do you function as a society when everyone is one bad day away from charging into machine gun fire? Marcus laughed, a short, bitter sound. Most humans never charge into fire. Most of us live normal, boring lives. We go to work, complain about traffic, worry about paying bills, binge-watch television shows. The vast majority of humans will never face a life-or-death situation. But we all know we could, and we all wonder what we'd do. And we're all terrified. The answer might be nothing. He finished his coffee. That's the secret, really. We're not brave. We're ashamed of the possibility that we might not be brave when it matters. So when the moment comes, when someone has to jump on the grenade or charge the hill or ram the enemy flagship, we do it because not doing it is worse. Not because we'd die, but because we'd have to live knowing we didn't. The silence stretched. The entertainment industry footage, Marcus said, changing subjects abruptly. American football, action movies, war films. You want to know why we make entertainment about violence? Because we're trying to understand it, trying to process it, trying to figure out what we'd do in those situations. Every human watches those movies and imagines themselves as the hero, the person who makes the sacrifice, the one who doesn't run. Do you imagine it? Mirren asked. Marcus met her eyes. Every day. I imagine scenarios where I have to be brave, and I imagine failing. I'm 46 years old. I work a desk job. I haven't been in real danger since I was mugged in college, but I still think about it. What I'd do. Whether I'd measure up. To what standard? I asked. To every human who came before me, he said simply. That's the weight we carry. Thousands of years of people who faced impossible odds and didn't quit. They set the bar, and now we have to live up to it or admit we're not worthy of their legacy. He stood, gathered his things. So here's my advice, for what it's worth. If you want to resign, resign. Nobody will judge you. This isn't your weight to carry. But if you stay, understand what you're signing up for. You're not just serving alongside humans. You're serving alongside a species that looks at certain death and takes it personally. We're not heroes. We're just too stubborn to let the universe win without making it work for it. Marcus walked toward the exit, then paused. One more thing. That footage you watched, those wars? We did that to each other. Imagine what we're like when we're on your side. He left. The remaining 63 cadets sat in silence for a long time. Then Cadet Mirren stood. I'm staying, she announced. If humans can charge uphill with bayonets while terrified, I can handle whatever the galaxy throws at us. Others stood. Not all of them, but more than half. I found myself standing too, though I wasn't sure when I'd made the decision. We stayed. Not because we weren't afraid anymore, but because we'd learned something important from those videos, something Marcus had tried to articulate. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's deciding that something matters more than being afraid. 3 months later, I taught my first class since the incident. 46 cadets, including 12 humans who'd recently joined the academy. I started the lecture differently this time. Today, I said, we're going to discuss why humans are terrifying. Not because they're stronger or faster or smarter than other species, but because they've spent their entire evolutionary history looking at impossible situations and saying, "Hold my beer." One of the human cadets, a young woman named Rivera, raised her hand. "Sir, what's hold my beer?" "It's an expression," I explained. "That roughly translates to, watch me do something incredibly stupid that will probably get me killed but might just work." She grinned. "Oh, yeah, that tracks." The other cadets, the ones who'd stayed, they laughed. Not from fear this time, but from understanding. "The truth about humans," I continued, "is that they don't have special powers. They're not physically superior. They don't have advanced regeneration or natural armor or hive mind coordination. What they have is a complete inability to accept reality as an obstacle." I pulled up a new video. Not warfare this time. Human scientists, engineers, explorers. Humans diving into ocean trenches that should have crushed them. Humans building machines to fly, to go to space, to split the atom. Humans looking at diseases and declaring war on microscopic organisms. Humans facing climate disaster, extinction events, cosmic threats, and refusing to accept defeat. Every species in the galaxy has a survival instinct that tells them when to stop, I said. Humans have one too. They just ignore it more creatively than anyone else. The human cadets were nodding. The alien cadets were taking notes. "Your assignment," I said, "is to work in mixed teams, humans paired with non-humans. Your goal is to develop tactical solutions to impossible scenarios. I want to see how human stubbornness combines with alien rationality. I want to see what happens when we should retreat meets hold my beer." Cadet Rivera approached after class with her partner, a Thessian named Krell. "Sir," she said, "Krell wants to know if the stories are true, about humans never surrendering." I looked at Krell, saw the genuine curiosity mixed with residual fear. "We surrender," I said carefully, "when we're out of options, out of ammunition, out of time. But the difference is, humans define out of options very differently than other species. For most species, out of options means the math says you can't win. For humans, out of options means you've literally tried everything, including several things that shouldn't physically work." Rivera laughed. "My grandfather was a Marine. He used to say, if violence isn't solving your problem, you're not using enough of it." "That's terrifying," Krell said. "Yeah," Rivera agreed cheerfully. "We know." They left together, already arguing about their tactical scenario, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months: hope. Not because humans weren't dangerous or insane or completely irrational by galactic standards, but because they were on our side now. The galaxy had spent millennia developing warfare based on logical principles, mathematical certainty, calculated risk. And then humans showed up and introduced chaos as a tactical doctrine. The next Galactic Council military briefing included a new assessment of combined human-alien forces. I attended as an observer. The statistics were remarkable. Mixed units showed significant improvements in creative problem-solving, unconventional tactics, and morale under pressure. Human tendency toward irrational courage apparently was contagious. Alien rationality tempered human recklessness just enough to make it strategic rather than suicidal. "We're not sure how to classify this," Admiral Kreshnal admitted during the briefing. "Humans make us braver. We make them smarter. The combination is unprecedented." "Terrifying," someone suggested. "Effective," the Admiral corrected, "which is somehow more terrifying." I left the briefing and found Marcus Delaney waiting outside, another cup of coffee in hand. "Heard your class is popular now," he said. "Students want to understand humans," I replied. "I'm not sure I can teach what I don't fully understand myself." "Nobody fully understands humans," Marcus said. "We don't even understand ourselves. But that's kind of the point, isn't it? We're unpredictable, irrational, impossible to properly calculate. And that makes us dangerous to our enemies and valuable to our allies." "Is that why you wanted to join the Galactic Council?" I asked. "To make everyone else a little bit human," He smiled. No, we joined because we're tired of fighting alone. For thousands of years, humans only had other humans. Every war was human versus human. Every victory was paid for in human blood. But now, he gestured at the academy grounds, where mixed species groups trained together. Now, when something threatens humanity, we have friends. We have allies. We have people who'll watch our backs. Even though we're insane? Especially because we're insane, he corrected. The galaxy needs a little insanity. Too much logic makes you predictable. Too much calculation makes you cautious. Sometimes you need someone who'll look at certain death and say, not today. I watched a training exercise where a human cadet and a Vorsian cadet were working together on a tactical problem. The Vorsian was calculating odds. The human was suggesting increasingly improbable solutions. They were both laughing. You changed us, I said quietly. Half my class resigned because they saw what humans are capable of. The other half stayed and became something different, braver, more adaptable, more willing to try impossible things. Good, Marcus said, because the galaxy's going to need that. There are threats out there, species and forces that see the Galactic Council as weak because we're rational, predictable, logical. They don't know about humans yet. They don't know what happens when you threaten something we've decided to protect. What does happen? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Marcus finished his coffee and smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression I'd ever seen on any species. We calculate the odds, he said softly. We run the numbers. We understand exactly how impossible the situation is, and then we fix bayonets and charge uphill anyway, because that's what humans do. We don't accept defeat. We don't surrender to impossibility. We just keep going until either we win or the universe gives up trying to stop us. He walked away, leaving me standing there, watching the future of galactic military doctrine take shape on the training grounds. Humans charging forward, too stubborn to quit. Aliens learning to match their pace, adding rationality to insanity. Together, creating something the galaxy had never seen before. An unstoppable force with an immovable resolve. I pulled out my datapad and deleted my resignation letter. Some truths were too important not to teach, even the terrifying ones, especially the terrifying ones, because the galaxy needed to learn what I'd learned from watching those videos, from talking to Marcus, from teaching humans and aliens side by side. That courage isn't about being fearless, it's about being afraid and doing it anyway. That humans aren't special because they're strong, they're special because they refuse to let weakness stop them. That the most dangerous words in any language, any species, any corner of the galaxy are simple human phrases like, hold my beer, watch this, and remember Pearl Harbor. And that sometimes, just sometimes, the only thing standing between civilization and chaos is someone too stupid or too stubborn or too human to know when they're beaten. I started writing my next lecture. Title, Advanced Xenopsychology. Why? Because I said so, is a valid human military strategy. The galaxy would never be the same, and honestly, that was probably a good thing. Because the universe is a dangerous place, full of impossible odds and unbeatable enemies, and situations that logic says can't be overcome. But logic never met humans, and now, neither had most of the galaxy. They were about to. I almost felt sorry for whatever came next, almost. But then I remembered the Johnstons' last transmission. Commander Huang's final words before ramming a flagship at relativistic speeds, and I smiled. This is for Pearl Harbor, you alien bastards. Not just remembering the past, using it, weaponizing memory and spite, and the accumulated stubbornness of an entire species that spent millennia refusing to accept reality's limitations. The galaxy was changing, one resigned cadet at a time, one inspired soldier at a time, one impossible victory at a time. And somewhere, I like to think, every human who'd ever charged uphill into gunfire or jumped on a grenade or crashed their plane into an enemy ship, they were watching. Watching their legacy spread across the stars, watching other species learn what it means to be human, not through genetics or biology or any physical transformation, but through choice. The choice to try when logic says stop, the choice to fight when math says flee, the choice to look at the universe and say, you first. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy, not weapons or technology or ships, but the simple, terrifying, beautiful idea that impossible is just another word for hasn't been done yet. And that was worth teaching, worth learning, worth spreading across every species, every world, every corner of space. Because in the end, humans weren't special. They just decided not to let that stop them. And that made all the difference.